Hello, everybody. My name is Sam, and welcome back to English Sponge. Today, we have another B2 podcast. So, if you guys are looking to get some good listening practice in today, this is the video for you. As always, I'm joined by James. How are you doing today, James?
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Today, we're going to be speaking about the UK's relationship with alcohol. Now, this is a very, very interesting subject, and there's lots of places where the conversation may go. So I'm really excited for the discussion ahead. So to start off this conversation, I'm going to ask you, James, how would you describe the drinking culture in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Obviously, pubs is the first thing that comes to mind. When I think of English drinking culture, I think of people going to the pub, hanging out at the pub with their friends, basically. So I think it's pretty cool. You know, I quite like going to the pub. I prefer going to the pub than going to a nightclub, for example. Like, you can go to the pub with your friends, and it's not like you're not usually going to be dancing around, like going crazy, but you're usually going to be having conversations, which is something that you don't really get at the nightclub. The other thing that I do like about the UK is I think we do pretty good beer. So when you go to a British pub, you can either get like a commercialized lager. That's what I would call a lager. And it's usually one of these big brands like Budweiser or Heineken or something like that. And you can use the metal tap and you can get cold beer. Or you can get a local beer, which is usually much better. So you can go to the pub. If you go to a British pub, you should definitely go and get one of those beers from the big pumps. Yes, you have to pump the beer, and the beer is at sort of room temperature. So it's not really cold, it's room temperature. Basically, any pub that you go into in the UK, there's usually going to be some kind of local beer, like a beer from the county that you're in, or at least a beer from, a local beer instead of one of these big commercialized, like Budweiser, Heineken beers. And so, yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind, Sam, basically, is pubs and pub culture in the UK. What about you?
Yeah, of course, pubs, also known as public houses, I believe that's their full name, are synonymous with drinking and just general social culture in the UK. The pub is the most typical social meeting place. People, after a hard day of work, may say to some of their colleagues, fancy stopping by the pub for a quick drink. And they'll share a drink or two before going off on their separate ways. Also, if you haven't seen a friend for a little while, you may send them a message and say, "Hi mate, would you like to go for a drink at the pub?" Pubs provide a place where you can sit down, catch up, and have a little natter amongst friends. Now, pubs sort of accommodate both casual drinking, that's the idea of, going out for one or two beers with a friend, but they're also accommodating for people who want to drink a little bit more. As you said, they sell a very large range of beers, some of them on draft, that's the metal tap that James was referring to, and some of them in bottles. But if you so desire, you can buy spirits, shots, and basically any type of alcohol that you can think of. A little fact for you all, just to understand how popular pubs are, there are over 45,000 pubs currently registered in the United Kingdom. Does that surprise you at all, James?
Not at all. Not even a little bit. I mean, there are pubs are ubiquitous in the UK, right? They're absolutely ubiquitous. So every village, maybe not every village, but even little villages will probably have at least one pub. So no, Sam, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing though, that number has dropped down from what it previously was. And as many people in the UK will attest to, pub culture is dying. Why do you think that is, James?
The first reason that comes to mind for me is simply the price. So beer, getting a pint, that's what when you go to the pub, you buy a pint, okay? So to get a pint of beer these days will set you back, right? Getting a pint will set you back around £4 at least, and that's a low price. If you go to London,
I want to know where you're drinking if you're getting £4 pints.
I think I'm even like you said. I think I'm behind the times. Like a pint is
Yeah,
more
it's
like
6 or 7 now.
I mean, it depends
for a
where
pint.
you go. If you're in London, it will be like £6 or £7 for sure. I'm pretty sure I can get a pint for like a fiver, in Reading or Oxford, I think, like in a standard pub. I think you can get like £5.50 or something. But the point is that the price is a lot now, whereas in the past, a pint of beer was like £2 or something. And so that's probably the first reason, Sam, is that a lot of people just really can't afford to hang out at the pub. And maybe they just prefer to buy beer from the supermarket and just drink it at home with their friends, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a lot more economically viable to drink beer from the supermarket instead of the pub. For the price of 2 pints at a pub, you can usually get 6 to 8 cans in the supermarket. So it only makes sense. Another thing I would say that sort of put me off of the pub a little bit was I saw people drinking their lives away. Now, when you go to pubs, you see the regulars there. People who stop in after work every day, and they'll stop in for a couple of drinks. There is a true issue with the frequency in which people drink in the UK, and also the excess of drinking as well. And I think it's a bit of an unspoken issue within our society. James, have you noticed any problems with British people drinking, either in excess, drinking too much at a time, or the frequency in which they drink?
I mean, I hadn't seen it as a problem until I went to other countries abroad, and then I was able to compare foreign countries with the UK. And we drink a lot in this country. There's no doubt about it. We drink a lot, and a lot of people drink to excess. A lot of people do binge drinking. Obviously, yes, it's a problem. There's no doubt. I've realized, which I didn't know before, but I've realized that drinking alcohol to the point you throw up, like fairly frequently, is not really normal around the world, right? Like
in England, it's so normal, and that's terrifying, right?
it is completely normal, especially for like an 18-year-old or something, right? That's what you do. In fact, like if you're hanging out with your friends, if you're 18 years old, it's really almost the goal of meeting your friends and going on a night out is almost like to see how drunk that you can get. Like that is literally the main purpose of why you're even going out in the first place in a lot of cases. And I know what you mean when you see the regulars, especially in pubs like Wetherspoons. So Wetherspoons it's a big chain of pubs in the UK. You can find a Wetherspoons pub in basically anywhere that you go. But yeah, if you go to the same Wetherspoons or the same pub, you will see the same people basically usually on the same table, right? Their regular table there drinking. And yeah, I think it's a problem. I think, it should not really be seen as normal, I would say. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think when we talk about excess, the UK undoubtedly has an issue with binge drinking. Binge drinking is when you drink a lot of alcohol at one time. The most common sign of someone who's been binge drinking is what James just said, vomiting. You are so drunk that your body is rejecting the alcohol that you've put in it. Binge drinking culture in the UK is very normal. It's exceptionally common. In fact, I have a little story about my time at university. We had in our football team a Canadian exchange student. Now, university sports teams drink a lot of alcohol, a heroic amount of alcohol, we may say. This Canadian exchange student went out with us for the first time. We went to a little nightclub together, and he went up to me, and I remember him looking me in the eyes, and he said, "What's happening today? Like, are you really celebrating something? Like what's going on?" I remember responding to him saying, "No, it's just a normal Wednesday night." And he was like, well, you keep going back to the bar every 3 minutes. I'm really confused. And it was that at that moment that I realized, yeah, other countries, they definitely don't binge drink quite like, people in the UK. What about the frequency at which people drink, James? Do you think that's an issue?
Yeah, I would say yeah. I mean, it depends on the individual. It obviously depends on the individual, but definitely people will simply, they may just drink on a weekday. Like I definitely know people who are like, well, it's a Tuesday night, I'll have a can of beer after dinner. Well, it's a Wednesday night, sure, let's have a glass of wine, you know. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is definitely seen as very normal just to, you can basically open a can of beer like any evening of the week. It doesn't have to be a Friday or a Saturday night. And quite often, if a lot of British people will definitely get really drunk once a week, I would say that's pretty standard, Sam, right? Like to get wasted, to get smashed like once a week. For a lot of people, this is pretty regular. And so, yeah, I mean, that's not healthy. So I think that it is too much, actually. And I didn't really notice this until I went to other countries and looked back at the UK and thinking, God, like the binge drinking culture here is pretty strong, you know.
Yeah, and I think the issue doesn't just lie in binge drinking, right? It lies in people drinking alcohol every day, or at least nearly every day. Now, in Britain, it is not seen particularly badly if you drink alcohol every day. If you have one glass of wine with every dinner, if you have a beer before bed, it is not seen as something crazy or like you have a problem. In other places, however, if you do drink frequently like this, it is seen as quite an issue. It's seen as something that you need to stop. I think this is definitely an issue amongst young professionals working in cities like London. One of my best friends, he works in the city of London, and almost every single day after work, he stops by a pub with his colleagues for 1 or 2 beers. Now, 1 or 2 beers on their own is not an issue. The issue lies when you drink 5 times a week, you then arrive to Friday night, and you binge drink. That is where true damage is done, but it's not seen as something that's a problem at all. Just to show you the extent of the drinking issue here in Britain, in 2024, 3% of adults were drinking at dependent levels. Out of every 100 people you see on the street, 3 of them have dependent drinking issues. That is a crazy statistic.
Yeah, I mean, a crazy statistic, but not. I don't know. It's not surprising. It's not really surprising. I think it's basically normalized, and I think the way that you put it earlier, which was, I think you said it's I forget the word you used, like an unspoken, like we just don't really mention it because it's just part of the culture. It's normal. You don't really think about it unless you really put the issue under a microscope, and so no, that statistic is not surprising at all for this country.
Yeah. An unspoken issue, I called it, and it absolutely is. It's not something that seems to be in the popular discourse. Okay, so to move on slightly, I want to ask you a bit about how people behave when they're drunk. Now, I've written down a term here, which you may hear a lot. Drunk and disorderly. Do you think that describes the average Englishman on a night out?
Not the average Englishman. I wouldn't say that like the majority. I mean, if you say the average Englishman is drunk and disorderly, that would mean like whatever, like huge numbers of people are causing problems, getting into fights. But it definitely represents quite a large majority of English people who are out. There's no doubt about it. You know, you will quite often, people will be getting into fights, getting aggressive, causing problems, you know, smashing things. It's pretty common. It's not that unusual. I mean, when I was younger, as an 18-year-old, I admit we did some stupid things while drinking. I believe we stole a few traffic cones over the years. We stole a few.
Did you go to university?
I did, yeah, 3 years.
Okay, yeah. I also did that. It is actually a bit of a rite of passage in the UK. If you go to university, you need to steal a road sign or a traffic cone whilst on a night out. Don't ask me why, but every student house you go to, they will have a road sign or a traffic cone. I will put in a picture here, or I'll get James to, of the traffic sign that I stole when I was at university.
Yes, just a quick anecdote here. When I was about 18, me and my friends must have stolen 3 or 4 traffic cones and like 4 or 5 signs, like from the streets, and we put them all outside in my friend's garden. So we just took them all. There were like 3 traffic cones, like 4 or 5 signs, and we just put them all in my friend's back garden. And so he woke up the next day with his garden just filled with this stuff, and he had no idea why it was there or who put it there. So that's pretty normal in the UK, I think.
It is. It's exceptionally normal. And I think when I think about this idea of drunk and disorderly, I do think about violent crime. I think about property damage as well. So you spoke a little bit about petty theft, theft of small items. But property damage, smashing road signs, windows, cars, people do this when they're drunk without reason, without thought. And it is something really, really problematic. I have a little statistic here to show just how prevalent alcohol is within crime in Britain. In England and Wales, during 2023 and 2024, 39% of all violent crime incidents involved alcohol. So over a third. That is an issue, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because people don't think of alcohol. Like, for example, if you think about drugs, everybody thinks that drugs should be illegal and banned. If you think about drugs like marijuana, for example, it's banned, it's illegal. But, you may raise the question then, well, if alcohol is causing all this damage, then should alcohol be banned? Should alcohol be illegal? But it's not the kind of question that is ever asked, because again, alcohol really is an integral part of the culture, especially British culture. I mean, I think a lot of people need alcohol just to feel relaxed and not, with their friends,
To get through the week, I would say.
Yeah, just to get through the week. People who have stressful jobs, they wouldn't really survive without alcohol.
Okay, James. So to go on to our final point for today's episode, I want to ask you a little bit about the damage that this alcohol culture causes. Both the individuals using alcohol, but then greater society, let's say. Society at large, we could say. What do you think the major impacts of this culture are on British people?
Oh, well, that is one hell of a question. Just give me a moment to collect my thoughts on this, because that's an enormous question. It's a really large issue. I suppose one thing that comes to mind is alcoholism. So I'm sure that there are a lot of people who began drinking alcohol in a social capacity with their friends, and later on it became a coping mechanism to deal with the stresses of life, and eventually they became an alcoholic. And so obviously that's one factor that this has on the culture, is you get more people struggling with alcoholism. And I think a lot of people, I would say most of us probably know at least one person in our lives who has had some kind of problem with alcohol. So yes, Sam, that's the first effect that comes to mind.
Yeah. So I have a lot of statistics for this section. I did a little bit of research before the podcast today. The first thing I want to bring up is in 2023 to 24, there were over 1 million hospital admissions in England alone, not the UK, related to alcohol consumption. Over 1 million. We have a National Health Service. Think about how much money that has cost us. Think about how many people who need help could not get it because there were, so many alcohol-related admissions. Alcohol deaths reached a 20-year high in 2020, and in 2023 there were 8,276 alcohol-specific deaths in England, either long-term implications of alcohol use or direct overdoses.
Yeah, once again, Sam, another statistic that again doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Maybe these are supposed to be shocking statistics, but for a Brit, this is, yeah, of course. I've actually spoken to a doctor, or maybe it was a nurse once, and they said that like every Friday and Saturday night, they prepare themselves for what's inevitably going to be coming to them at the hospital. Every Friday and Saturday night, they get loads of patients who are in for alcohol-related issues, whether that's simply drinking too much alcohol, whether that's drink driving, or whether that's, violence which has been fueled by alcohol. Inevitably, every Friday and Saturday night, the doctors and nurses at the hospitals have to, get themselves ready for what's going to come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something truly shocking, I guess, for anyone who is not British. I explain the alcohol culture to people here in Argentina, and they're very shocked. In fact, one of my two Argentine students, recently went on a trip to the United Kingdom. And during this trip, he went to see the Oasis concert at Wembley Stadium. When we had our first lesson back together, he and I asked him how the trip was. Before he said it was good, before he said he had a great time, the first thing he said to me was, "Wow, you guys really have a problem with alcohol, don't you?" And I think that's very telling of the situation.
Yeah, very telling. And it's difficult to notice your own culture until you speak to somebody from outside of it, or you get an outsider's perspective. And yeah, I think I'm sure that people like to drink around the world. People drink beer in most countries, perhaps except for, Muslim countries obviously don't drink as much. But I think that in comparison, the UK, from an outsider's perspective, it must seem all a bit crazy in terms of alcohol, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, James, I have one final question for you to sort of finish off. And this question is based around a statistic. So, in 2023, the rate of alcohol-specific deaths for men was 20.6 per 100,000 people, whereas women were 9.7 per 100,000 people, meaning that men were more than twice as likely to die as a result of alcohol consumption. Why do you think that is? Why is this an issue affecting men at such a great level?
Yeah, once again, another non-surprising statistic. Of course, men have more problems with alcohol in this country. So I guess the one thing I would say is that I think that alcohol, or drinking alcohol, is in a way tied to masculinity in our culture, right?
Lad culture.
Lad culture.
Lad culture. Mm-hmm.
Lad culture. So in what we call lad culture in the UK, the biggest lad, the biggest man, let's say, is the one in many cases who can drink the most. And if you are somebody who can't drink very much, if you are a bit of a lightweight, right? If you're a lightweight, then you are looked down on. It's like, he's weak. He's weak. He can only drink 3 beers. He's weak. And so it's almost like men are almost competing. Most, I guess, young guys, right, are competing to see, who can drink the most alcohol and who can be the biggest man. And there's definitely something to that in the culture. So it's not surprising to me that men have more issues with it. One thing I will say is that actually, although the women drink a lot less in this country, women here drink a lot more than most countries in the world. I can tell you that. They drink less than the men, but still women drink a lot as well, actually.
So, to wrap things up, thank you guys so much for watching today's podcast. We really, really hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope you've been enjoying the series so far. Please leave us a comment down below telling us your thoughts on this issue. Are these statistics surprising for you, or is it something you expected? We're going to read all of the comments and we will try to reply to every single one. As always, once again, thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to English Sponge, of course. And if you want to track your watch time, check out the English Sponge website. It's really, really good, an excellent platform. James, do you have anything final to say to the lovely people?
None at all. Sam, I think you've wrapped it up very nicely. So thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.
Catch you later.